Welcome to our third education event conducted via Zoom, and we're so happy to have you join us today. This is Learn, as you all can see from the slide up here on the screen. And today we're going to hear from Diane Ronayne about writing your own obituary. First of all, what is Learn? Learn is Lifelong Education and Aging Resource Network, an Idaho-based nonprofit organization that a number of us started just over a year ago with intention to provide quality community education on retirement, age-related topics in the area of health, wealth, lifestyle, and caregiving. So we are part of the Leaders Network of the Society of Certified Senior Advisors. And so we have a standard for our speakers. All of our presentations are free. However, we do need to make a disclaimer. All of us are very knowledgeable in our areas of expertise, but the content is provided for general information purposes only and is not to be considered legal, financial, or health advice. So if you have a need for that, please find the appropriate person in your world. And if you need help, any of us, I'm sure, can find a referral source for you. So today, Life Changes, which is my company, Life Changes Elder Care Consulting, is sponsoring this program today. And we provide the easiest way to understand what care management is we're like the hired daughters, except for we have lots of experience and expertise to prevent and solve problems. And we're so pleased to have with us today Diane Ronayne is our speaker. And sorry, my little finger gets going here if I'm not paying attention to that. Many of you already know Diane. She is a subject matter area in this area. She teaches this through OSHR and other sources. And I'm so pleased to have you with us today, Diane. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to, if there's anything to share about your bio that wasn't already on the website, please feel free to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Dee. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm very excited to present this, my very first Zoom presentation. So please bear with me if I don't do the right thing, but I'm hoping that you'll enjoy it. It's kind of an odd sounding thing to do, but I think as we go through this, you'll understand there are lots of good reasons for doing it, and there's no time like the present to start. A little bit about me, as I think on my website, or on the Learn website, it says I went to Stanford, I got a communications degree. That was quite a few years ago. And after I got my degree, I ended up doing some writing for a friend of mine, went back to Stanford for a 2-week course and wrote my first obituary during that course of myself. And it's a bit of a shock to do that at age 32. When I did that, I thought, oh, well, what am I going to do for the next 50 years of my life? So I just imagined different things. And I bring this up because when you write your obituary today, you can do the same thing. For all you know, you're going to be living way longer than any of us ever thought we would, frankly. And so as you're writing your obituary, think about, what you might want to do still, your bucket list, so to speak, because we all have a lot of good years left in us, and we might as well take advantage of it. So next.
So Tiffany, you should be able to share now.
We'll see how that works.
Yay.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. Tiffany Robb is helping me. She's a dear friend. She's going to be making a presentation for Learn next week, actually. And she also is a neighbor. So she came over to help me do this. So how to write your own obituary. First of all, why write your own obituary? Next. Who knows you better than you? You are the expert on the subject matter. And it sounds morbid or narcissistic, but it's not really. going through the process of this is what is important in your own development. You'll come to understand yourself better, appreciate why you have been in this world, and perhaps add to your bucket list of things to do as you accept the limits of the time left before you. Next. It doesn't have to be long. You determine the content. In this case, Mr. Ledbetter, or Mr. Legler, his daughter said, insisted on a 2-word obituary. Doug died. He said over and over, when I die, I want my obituary to say just Doug died. Other people's obituaries would say he was the president of this, the director of that. And Dad would say, what? Couldn't they hold down a job? She added that her dad, who died at age 85, was very lighthearted and had a great sense of humor. However, most of us would probably like to say a bit more about ourselves. Next. You control the voice and the tone as well as the content when you write your own obituary. And just to refresh your memory, a voice is the person you're using. I baked pies, or she flew planes. The tone is kind of the general feeling of the piece. It can be formal, informal, funny, serious. It can tell people to do something or not to do something, or just describe some history or some events. So next. Here's one that you might find interesting. It's Flip. This woman, her whole obituary was written this way, actually, but I just quoted from the first paragraph or so. You also will notice the photographs. This woman had quite a character, as you can see. She had them put a photograph of her in the after she had died. This looks like a picture after she's been embalmed, or so. It's very unusual, to say the least. Next. You want to go. When you're doing an obituary of your own, you don't have to say I, but you can. In this case, the obituary was written more or less traditionally, but she added this in her own voice because she wanted to warn people about what had happened to her, and she didn't want that to happen to them. And you can use your very important space here to do that. You can tell people what you've learned over a period of your life and hope that they can make some use of it in their own lives. Next. As you can see, you can say pretty much anything. This woman had a great set of photos that she chose. You can kind of see without even reading it that it's going to be interesting and a little not the usual. And I gather that she was that kind of a person as well. So basically, when you write your own obituary, you can write anything that the paper will publish. However, most people choose to, next, share their resume virtues or their eulogy virtues. And I got those words from a book that I highly recommend, anything he writes, David Brooks. He's a commentator on the PBS Nightly News and a very wise man. And he, in his introduction to this book, The Road to Character, talks about these 2 virtues that people have. Their resume virtues, where it's basically what your job would be, your skills, your external success. And then there are your eulogy virtues. And these are deeper, they're more personal, maybe. They're the ones, as he says, they get talked about at your funeral. Ideally, you will share at least a few eulogy virtues. You can use as much detail as possible, including direct quotes, if appropriate. You can also tell a story. You may find that your life has a narrative arc that you can follow, not just a chronological happening A, B, C, D. You might find that there's a theme, like you're going from rags to riches, or that you've discovered something or enriched your community, or that you have been giving birth all your life to all kinds of things, kids and ideas. So think about when you've been in control or not, and what you've learned from relationships over the years. What you choose to focus on and how you talk about it reflect and shape who you are. So, in addition to saying what happened, say why it was important, what it meant for you then and later, how it made you into who you are. Essentially, ask yourself what you want people to think and feel when they hear your name after you're gone. Next. Having an obituary is actually very important for a number of reasons, not just your own personal. First of all, it's hopefully the accurate historical record. It's up to you to make it accurate, but that's in your best interest and the interest of history as well. Obituaries are used very often for all kinds of research, certainly genealogy, but many other kinds of research. As a reporter, as an editor, I used obituaries for all kinds of different things. And it also connects you to a time and a place. If you read obituaries in our papers, you will often learn a lot about the history of a town or a Basque culture, or things that were important to the person who died. They describe them in great detail, what it was like growing up there, who lived there, what they did, what their values were. These are all important things that help you understand and help people who are reading what you're writing understand what's important in the place that you all live. It's also an obituary, of course, as a keepsake. People who know and love you will want to clip it out and save it. I do that all the time. People I know and respect, I keep a copy of their obituary just to have. So some people might say, well, Google or Facebook, they're going to document my presence here. Well, sometime Google your name and see what comes up. See who comes up. I have kind of an odd name, Diane Ronayne. There is another Diane Ronayne. She is not related to me or my husband's family. She lives in the Midwest. She's a totally different person. But if somebody Googles thinking they're going to find me and they find her, they're going to be very confused. So also collect all of the information that you can while you're alive, because that'll help you make this accurate, even if you expect someone else to complete the final version. And be sure your executor or the funeral home that is going to be working with your family has your obituary and instructions for where to publish it. Next. So what should be in your obituary? There are some things that have to be in your obituary, and they have to be correct. The basic facts are your full name, and if you're a woman, your maiden name, any nickname by which you were known. One of the obits that I have been looking at is a gentleman who's spent his business life selling explosives, and the name in his obituary title was Dynamite Don, because that was what he was known as. You also want to have this information in your obituary for your parents, certainly your mother's maiden name, if at all possible, and where you were born, where you were married, and obviously the date of your death will be put in there by someone else. And then you want to have the funeral, celebration, or any services that you're going to have, so that people, if you want it to be a public event, so that people can find out about it, they'll know where it is, and they can come or tune in this case, since so many of them are virtual these days. Funeral homes will provide forms to fill out this kind of information. And some of the online publication websites also have forms that you can fill this information out in. So you don't have to totally remember all of this yourself, but these are the basics. Next. So what could you choose to have in your obituary that doesn't have to be there? When I first started writing obituaries for the Idaho Statesman in the 1980s, the newspaper required that a cause of death be in each obituary if the person was older than 50 or younger than 50 years old. So if I got an obituary, and I took dictation from the mortuaries actually over the phone, and then I wrote the obits. If they were younger than 50, I had to find out what the cause of death was and put that in. This is not the case anymore. However, people often do want to know, especially if they haven't kept track of you for a long time, what the cause of death was. And sometimes you can guess that in an obituary that doesn't state it, because there's a charity at the end that says Alzheimer's or cancer or something like that. And you can figure that that might have been their cause of death. But it's a good idea to put it in if you feel comfortable doing that. You also can put in the people in your family who died before you did, and any surviving loved ones. Certainly, this can be fraught with some difficulties depending on how your family is structured, but there are lots of ways to include names that may or may not be legal or de rigueur. So it can be done. The important thing is that it's who you want to have in there, and you'll find a way to do it. Any schools you've attended, all the way from kindergarten to your PhD, if you have one. Your military service, you'll notice that often there's an American flag on an obituary in the Statesman anyway, that indicates that person served in the military. Places of employment and positions you've held. Obviously, if you die at any age that we are at this point, you can't possibly list all of these resume virtues, but pick out the ones that you think people who know you will find important. They'll remember you from that, having worked with you or having seen your business card or whatever. So that kind of thing is important. Memberships in organizations like your church, civic clubs or Rotary, anything that you've done in a nonprofit world, those kinds of things are places where people will remember you and will recall the things that you did together or the things that you gave to our community through those organizations. Then if you have hobbies or special interests, by all means, put those in too. Especially if you did it with other people in a team situation, or if you had contests, or if you ran Roby Creek with the same fellow runners for 20 years in a row, or whatever. Those things are important too. And finally, any charities that you want to donate, have people donate to in your name. Obviously, in the old days, when everybody had a funeral with flowers, you'd spend money on flowers for the deceased. Now it's not so much common, especially during COVID, to have a funeral with flowers. But the phrase "in lieu of flowers" still is often used at the end of your obituary when you say, "In lieu of flowers, please a donation to the animal shelter or to the Alzheimer's Society," or whatever, in the name of the deceased. It's a nice suggestion to people who want to do something to honor your name. Next. So there are some things that that you want to not have in your obituary. First of all, inaccuracies. And of course, you want to spell everybody's name right. You want to spell places right. You want to get all the facts right that you can. I mean, if you don't know an exact year, you could say around 1926, the farm was sold, or whatever. But it's nice to have as close an accurate factual thing as you possibly can. Relationships. If you're going to identify who your cousins, your nephews, your nieces, your grandkids, be sure that they are done accurately. And this all makes sense, especially in terms of the research value of an obituary, as well as for your family and for the people who know you. They want to have their name spelled right. That was the first thing I learned when I was writing obituaries at the Statesman. People get really mad at you if you don't get their name spelled right, and rightly so, they should. There are also things that you want to avoid in terms of unintentionally omitting someone, someplace, something that hurts somebody who's reading it. And I put this in because when I was writing my father's obituary, I had just gone to Denver. I'd been with him the last couple of days of his life. I was fairly distraught, and I was then asked to write his obituary, which I did, but I wasn't very clear in my head. And so I left out the name of his cousin, who was a very important person in his life. They were good buddies when they were kids, and I just left out his name. And after the obituary appeared, my cousin, his daughter, called me and said, you know, Uncle Will was really unhappy because his name wasn't in Bruce's obituary. And I felt just awful. And it wasn't anything I intended to do, but I just did it because I wasn't quite thinking. And it's easy to make a mistake like that. So that is all by way of saying, be sure and have other people read this before it goes to press. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So you're double checking the spelling of all the names. You get all the dates and all the places right. Don't worry about the grammar or punctuation until the final draft. A lot of people think, oh my God, I'm going to make a mistake and sound like a fool. Well, we all sound like fools at times. So don't worry about that when you're writing this thing. Just the important thing is to have it capture what it is you want to say. Then ask somebody who knows you, and hopefully your family, to proofread it and look for the accuracy on relationships, on spellings, on places and times and dates. Correct your English if they're good at that, if you trust them to do that. And most importantly, tell you if something is missing, because it's really easy to forget something especially if you're writing something at the last minute. That's one good reason for doing this much earlier than you're ever going to need it. Next. What about photography? I think most of you will agree that photos make an obituary very interesting. I mean, you're seeing a face and it either attracts you or doesn't, but it may be somebody you know, or somebody you've seen in a grocery store, a checkout clerk, or somebody that you may not even know their name, but it's somebody that that you would like to read about. And so they attract the reader's attention. They remind the readers who you are if they, as I say, if they've seen you somewhere, or if they haven't seen you for a number of years, especially if this is being published in a paper where you've moved away from your hometown, say, and your hometown folks may not have seen you for a long time, but they certainly know your name and they'd want to know about your death. So it's a good idea to have a photo for that reason. They also can be used, a photo can be used to show activities that you did and that you enjoyed, that made you feel good, or people who you love. Often you'll see a photo with both a man and a woman, a spousal couple in it, when only one of them has actually died, and the obituary is only about one of them. They, this, oh dear, I think I just went back. Okay, sorry. Photos must be sharp, and you can make some corrections in photographs if you take an old photo out of an album and it's torn or has a scratch on it or something. Those things can be repaired digitally, but if it's not sharp, it's much harder to make it work in a publication, especially in a paper. So do get the best quality of photo that you can. When it's digitalized, have it done at least 150 DPI to 300 DPI. That's a resolution, and it should be at least that high resolution in order for it to come across properly. Some publications, if you spend a little bit more, will let you put 2 pictures in your obituary. So there's that option too, and I'll show you an example if next. Here's an example of one. Pictures, as you know, are worth 1,000 words. In this case, Chloe, the young woman on the top, died at the age of 20, and that photograph was taken of her as a child, probably much earlier than that, but perhaps not. She was never very healthy, and yet she, according to the obituary, had a very great impression on people's lives as far as her outlook and her positive nature. So that photograph to me really expresses that about her, even though I don't know her, I've never heard of her, but it made me want to read her obituary. The photograph next to that, next to Chloe, is Gonzalo Rico. And Gonzalo was a musician, as you can see. He also, he wrote an obituary, or one was written for him. It's hard to say, and we'll go into that ghostwriting later, but his obituary is really pretty interesting. Some people, as I said, like to give advice in their obituaries, and he did. I'm going to quote you some things from his obituary. Legacy. The greatest legacy one can pass on to his children and to his grandchildren is not money or material things, but the legacy of strong character and something that forever lives on through his bloodline. Gonzalo Rico's greatest legacy was music. His love for music was so passionate and well known that it has passed on to live through his many sons and daughters. His song notes can be heard by his 6 sons, and then they're listed, as well as sweet melodies by his 7 daughters, and they're all listed. Then he goes on to say, or they go on to say, Gonzalo knew his time was drawing near, but he did not show any fear. He was a man who very rarely ever showed fear. He was ready for his journey into his next chapter. Being surrounded by loved ones brought much joy to him. In his last hours with his family, he made it very well known that he wanted music and celebration. A man can feel complete, knowing he lived his life to the fullest. Gonzalo truly lived a full life. His life, music, and legacy will be celebrated. So that gives you a pretty clear picture of what Gonzalo was like, and what was important to the people who loved him, who will always think about him when they hear guitar music. Also, his funeral Flahiff Funeral Chapel handled his funeral, and they have an option for you to put a video on their website of your loved one's photos. And they did that with Gonzalo. It's a lot of still photography from all of the ages of his life. And there was guitar music that came with it. And it was just perfect. It was a wonderful tribute to him, and it went very well with this obituary. So think about that kind of thing when you're writing your obituary too. How else can I use these pictures and work this into what I'm telling people about my life? The third set of pictures here, the two pictures, are Warner Terrell. And Warner was a man I knew in Boise. I didn't know him well, but he was one of the, he was a native, born and raised in Boise, and his obituary begins with talking about his father's family had been in Boise since 1903. He grew up in the River Street neighborhood south of the railroad tracks, a multiracial community. He recalled trains passing by, spewing smoke on the houses. His childhood was spent tending his grandmother's garden and helping his grandfather bundle kindling for sale. It was his grandfather who introduced him to his lifelong passions of fishing, bird hunting with his dogs, and for big game. So obviously fishing was important to him, and he put this picture in of himself as a child with his catch, pride of his catch, and it's so cute. It just really tells you something about him, as well as the much more formal photograph of Warner, which he also ran. So together they begin to say to people, wow, who was this guy? I'd like to know more about him. And then you start reading his obit and you find out all kinds of things. He was a student body president, and he was on all kinds of organizations, and all, a wonderful guy, and very active in his community. So I would strongly urge you to put some thought into what photographs that you want to run with your obituary, and or in other parts of the funeral online as well. Next. So how do you get started? Well, in this handout that you have on online, and I strongly urge you to download it. It's actually 7 pages long, but it's not as it's got a lot of information in it, but it's not terribly frightening, I don't think. But it gives you some do's and don'ts on how to write down details and different things to do. So I won't go into that right now. You can download that, and if you have questions, if you've read it and have questions, I'll be happy to answer those later. But here are some techniques that might be useful. If you are not sure about how to get started and you feel uncomfortable about writing, try this. There are any number of writing groups, memoir groups through Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and other organizations, I suspect. And they meet regularly, and they write to something called prompts. And what that is an idea, a poem, a quotation, a little piece of writing, something that's going to get your mind started and that you can grab and just pull into about a 1,500 word little essay that you write just in response to that, whatever that prompt is, within 10 or 15 minutes. These groups, my writing group is like this. We've met monthly for almost 30 years now, and we do other things too, but we always write to prompts, and it just keeps your mind in a place where you're not afraid of that white space on the page. You just say, oh, I want to think about this, and now I can just write it down, and you do it. And it's a very helpful practice to use. You can get prompts from books. This one's called Writing Down the Bones. It's an old one. Natalie Goldberg wrote years ago. She's written other ones since then. She's an excellent writer herself, and she makes it approachable, writing approachable. Another book that you might look at is Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. Again, it came out in the 1990s. It's a good book. It's full of good suggestions about writing and things that she found were problems for her that she overcame. Another thing you can do is keep a daily journal. If you write about things that are going on in the present, you're going to get ideas about things that happened in the past because they'll remind you of things. And you can write those down as you go. And then you can go back to your journal for future reference anytime. Another thing you can do to kind of get yourself organized is to take a sheet of paper and draw circles on it for the organizing principles in your life, such as your core values, how you operate in the world, people who influenced you, people you influence, all things like that. Then as you fill in those circles, you're going to see connections between them and connections to other new circles that will lead to other circles and other things. And you're going to get your mind going back and figuring out, remembering things that you might have forgotten. You can also read, of course, I strongly suggest you read other obituaries all the time and think about what makes them appealing or what makes them unappealing. And just kind of file that away in your head as well. And if you find one that you really like, that you like how those that person used a phrase to get somewhere that you think you might want to go in your obituary, especially when it comes time to how you handle family situations, people who may be friends but are close friends in, I don't know, just different ways of describing relationships. Other obituaries can be helpful in showing you how that can be done. You'll notice most obituaries are written in the third person. He or she did such and such, not I did such and such. And many appear to be written by the children of the decedent. You can write in either the first person, I, or the third person, she or he, whichever you feel most comfortable doing. So next, the hardest part may be sitting down and beginning. And I think it was Hemingway who said, when somebody asked him, how do you write? He said, I put butt in chair. And really that's what it comes down to. You've got to sit down and do it. Write an outline. You can use the circle outline that I talked to you about or any other kind of outline, but something that's going to remind you of what you've got to say. Then think about the experiences that made you unique. And I list on this handout a number of different things that you can think about to kind of jar those memories. But then be prepared for feelings to emerge. And you will get feelings coming up as you think about people you love who are gone, people do you hate that are gone. I mean, there are lots of things that come up as you're doing this whole process. And that's actually one of the advantages, one of the beauties of writing your own obituary, because you go through all of this. And it's really, it builds your character in a way. It's very interesting, but I strongly recommend it for that reason alone. Then you're going to write a shitty first draft, and that's what Anne Lamott coined many years ago. I think almost any professional writer is familiar with that phrase. Everybody's first draft is shitty, but it's a first draft. You got it down. Then after you've written it, put it away. don't look at it for a day or two if you've got that kind of time, and kind of let your subconscious work, because the subconscious is going to do all of the work for you, really, in many, many ways. So after that first couple days, pick it up again, take it out of the drawer, bring it up on your computer, and you will see things that you did not expect to see. You'll remember things that, oh, I forgot to put so-and-so in there, or, oh boy, that was I shouldn't be doing that. You know, your subconscious will have helped you work on your draft. So then you revise your draft. Then if you can, put it away again. Wait another few days and look at it again, and more things will probably come up. So after doing this for a while, then that's when you have your editor look at it. Somebody that knows you, knows your family, and that you trust to give you some honest advice about how it's going to come across to the world. Then, after you've got that review done and revised again, maybe have second person review it, revise it again, then you're going to want to know how much this thing is going to cost to print. So, assuming you want to have it in the paper, which is what I'm trying to convince you to do. So if you go online in either the press or the Statesman, and I have in the handout, it tells you how to do that, you will find a template, and you can insert your text in that template, and it will tell you how much it's going to cost. And don't be shocked. Just think of it as an investment. The price depends on the length of the text, the design template, and the media package that you choose anymore. Used to be just a newspaper, column inches, no more. There's all kinds of other options you have. There's a running total on the page that you put in once you put the text onto the computer. And there's also an initial starting price. For the Idaho Statesman, that starting price is $270. For the Idaho Press, the initial price is $35. And these are as of this week. They could probably change anytime. Newspapers in other places will have other prices. They'll have other templates. Academic publications will have another whole way of doing things. So you just have to contact each and every publication that you want to have run your obituary and find out from them what it's going to cost. And there are other regulations and how you do it. You also should know that obituaries can be published by your funeral home and not in the newspaper at all. And often you'll see a death notice, because the death notice is a legal document or information that has to be filed in your newspaper record in your county. So every person who dies will have a death notice, but not everybody has an obituary. So that's why there's a difference there. Anyway, as you find out how much your obit is going to cost, then you can decide if you want to write it longer and spend more, or shorten it and spend less. While you're writing, talk to people who know you about what you're doing and ask them for their input too. Next slide. Ghostwriting is something that I've done. My first book that I wrote was a book I ghostwrote for a college classmate of mine who was a wonderful nurse, and she'd gotten her master's in nursing, public health nursing, and she wanted to write a book about home health care. She did not want to write a thesis. She wanted to write a textbook because she thought it was so important that people, and this was in the 1980s, so it was before home health was ever really on anybody's they weren't thinking about it in a focused way in a nursing school situation. So she hired me. I went down to California. I lived with her for a month. I wrote her book for her. It was published. It was Mosby Publishing Company, a very high quality nursing textbook company. And it was used as a nursing textbook for many years. They asked her to do a second edition about 10 years later, and she said, "Oh no, I've too much work. I'm not going to do it." But ghostwriting is very credible. So you can ghostwrite your obit and have someone else put it in the paper for you. You can have everything that you want in it, but it won't be under my name. I did such and such. Or like Joan on the far right hand side here, she did say that she, in her words, she asked her niece, I think it was, to put her words in, and she did. So you can really do almost anything you want to do if you do your own obituary, either under your own name or under I did such and such, or through other people who want to help you get the word out. Next. So I don't know how many of you are Facebook users. Some people my age will not trust it. I have been a Facebook user. I've had an account since 2008 when I went to my 50th college reunion at Stanford, which of course is a very techie university. The first thing they wanted us to do before we even came was set up a Facebook account and start writing back and forth to each other about what we've been doing. And, Facebook comes out of Facebooks. When I was in college, probably when you were in college, we had hard copy Facebooks, and that's how we got to know each other. So for me, it's fine. Other people don't do it, whatever. But if you do it, you have some things you can use it for. Your Facebook post will jog your memory, depending on how long you've been doing it. Your Facebook post may provide photographs of you that you might think about using in your obituary. You can also order printed copies of everything that was in your Facebook posts for 10 years. It's not very expensive. I think it's about $20 to get a copy of it. And then you'll have something to put it out at your funeral or to give your kids or whatever. That's a tangible object that's all of the stuff in your Facebook. Facebook is also a nice way and a very efficient way for the information about your death to appear to people who may not live anywhere near you, people who might have been in a business or a class of yours years and years and years ago, and they now live in Timbuktu, but they would want to know about your passing. So Facebook is good for using that, getting the word out in a very broad way as well. However, Facebook also has some issues about privacy, and probably you're not going to want to keep your Facebook up forever. Somebody could try to steal your identity using it, especially if they happen to know that you have passed away. So there are instructions on Facebook for how to designate someone who can close your Facebook account. And you might want to take a look at that just to make sure that nothing goes awry after you're gone with your Facebook information. Next. So we have a few more resources. Legacy.com is amazing. You may have already come across it. It's got a lot of information about end-of-life topics, how to write and post an obituary, obviously, tips on creating meaningful obituaries, your obituary, a parent's obituary, a friend's obituary, how to make a portrait, a photo portrait that they'll be really good, and how to place obituaries in publications. It's got a lot of information up there, and the two newspapers we have locally both use legacy.com as part of the mechanism for publishing your obituary. So you will run into legacy.com quite a bit. The video that I mentioned, I didn't play today. It's only about 4 minutes. The gentleman who did it gave a TED talk, and he's from India and has a pretty strong Indian accent. And it's a little hard to discern all of the words he's saying. So I didn't think I wanted to put it on this presentation today, but it's interesting. And he, among other things, he did a lot of, he read 2,000 obituaries from the New York Times. Then he took the words in them, used a computer, obviously, and discovered which words were most commonly used in all of these obituaries. And then he compared the words in people's obituaries who were famous and the words in obituaries of people who were not famous. And he found some interesting similarities and dissimilarities. So it's kind of worth spending 4 minutes on, and you can go to the link there. It's on YouTube there, I think, or TED Talk. Then the other source I noted here is ObitKit. And ObitKit is something I came across when I first started doing this. She's been doing this about more than 10 years now. Her name is Susan Soper. She's now got a website. She does a blog, and she's got this little book that you can get. It's got blank lines for you to fill in different things. Kind of walks you through how to write an obituary, gives you little hints, gives you some examples. So it's only, I don't know what it is. It's not very expensive. This was $20 when I bought it 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but it's not very expensive. And it might be useful for you or for someone who's working on an obituary that you know. So how are we doing on time here? I did want to mention that taking on this writing an obituary, you're looking at a different time in your life. You're entering a time when you're going to be pretty serious about what's coming up. And it's sobering. And sometimes it's scary. And sometimes you get emotional about it. And it requires compassion for ourselves and for our loved ones. So I find this Buddhist meditation, next, very helpful when I look at it almost every day. When I'm overwhelmed by emotions, I can read and reflect on this. It reminds me of one reason to write my obituary, to recall and share my actions and perhaps lessons I have learned from them in this life. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you so much for inviting me to share these thoughts and for your attention. If you have any questions next, please ask them. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, Diane. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I know it was intimidating to me to have to write the first one. I wish I would have had your training beforehand, because I wasn't for sure that all the things that I did in my mom and dad's obituary were appropriate, but you've reconfirmed it was. I wanted to show their humanity, and I wanted people to know who they were. And so you really confirmed for me that that was an appropriate thing to do. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you, Diane. I've written obituaries for many of my family members, unfortunately, and I would love to have had some of this information to help me along with that. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. It's something we all have to do at some point if we love someone and want to help them, either ourselves or someone that we love. So you might as well start now.
Well, I've always found it, I've been more inclined to read them when they were kind of sassy and they showed me the character of the person. So I do appreciate when people step out of the box and do more than just the stats.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and when I'm working with clients who are working on their obituary, I tell them, you get to pick the picture. You know, you get to be the one to choose the picture that's going to memorialize you. And I think one of my favorite choices that was made was when a client said she really didn't love any of the pictures of her as an adult, but there was a picture of her as a child that really encapsulated her personality and really made her feel like that's who she was. And I said, there's no rules, you know, put that picture in there. And it's clearly a picture from the 40s. Nobody's going to think it was taken yesterday and that you know, that a child passed. And so it was a great process for her to be able to think about it differently. So thank you, Diane, for those suggestions. I like them.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, and you know, for both our mother and father, but I think we chose 3 pictures for each one of them. And as you said, Diane, you can publish 2. And so we picked different pictures for different publications. So both our mom and dad lived different places. And we felt, you know, one of the pictures was more relevant at one point in time, like where she was raised and grew up. So we had a younger picture of her there versus the 2 of kind of mid-career. And then the one that I just love of her at the end, that she had a beautiful sun hat on and lipstick on and her head kind of tilted. And so I think picking the photos that went with where and who the target population was that might be reading it was helpful for us as well.
Totally. Yeah, especially if it's a business publication or a fraternal organization or an alumni publication, you know, you'd probably want to use a different photograph for those. Yeah.
When my brother-in-law passed away, rather than we used the picture in on the card, the prayer card, but we used the Chicago Fire Department logo instead. That was something that was extremely, and then the Celtic cross. Those were 2 things that were very meaningful to him. But the other comment I wanted to make, and I've heard a couple of people say this, when you write your obituary, technically you get the last word.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe even the last laugh.
Yeah, and believe me, I have some stuff in here that I didn't put up, but you cannot believe what people will say. I mean, they will criticize people up one side and down the other, and it's in black and white print in their local paper for everybody to see. So yeah.
So thank you so much, Diane. I know Dee expressed her thanks. I would like to thank you on behalf of the Learn Board and for being part of this inaugural learning session, community education series. And I also want to express my thanks to Dee as the sponsor of this initial series and Life Changes Elder Care Consulting for believing in Learn and what we are doing and trying to do for the community. So thank you, Dee. All registered attendees will receive an email inviting you to join the Learn mailing list in the next day or so. If you are not a registered attendee but came in with somebody else and would like to join our mailing list, please head out there to learnidaho.org and you can request to join our mailing list. You will need to confirm that subscription, so watch for an email to confirm the subscription. We do hope you will think about these other sessions and join us for those that are meaningful to you or someone you love.
Excellent. Thank you all for being with us today. Diane, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. It's great to see all of you here. I hope to see you again at another training. Take good care.